everybody. It's Georgia Weidman, author of Penetration Testing, a hands-on introduction to hacking, and your instructor for this accompanying lab. So this time we are going to start getting familiar with some of the tools of the trade for web app testing. So we did some third-party web app testing where it was, commercial off the shelf or open source, and, there were known vulnerabilities in them, and we found them and exploited them. What we're going to be doing in this section is a bit different. We're going to be finding vulnerabilities in web apps for the first time, perhaps. So simulating, somebody asked you to do a pen test of their web app, not their network. So often you do both. But anyhow, first we want to get a little familiar with the tools. This time we're going to look at Burp Suite, which is a really great tool. Love it. I try to be vendor agnostic, but really, I love me some Burp Suite for web app stuff. All right. My mic is in the way. See if I can type one-handed. Here we go. Try not to just bump into it over and over. All right. So this is a web app one, so we may as well just, go with it. You can't do that. And it's .3, and we've got another example of a very nice web application that is specifically designed to be vulnerable. And we can, for this one, we want to go actually to the URL basic. It does request a login, give it something like, not admon. Well, admon will work too, but admin was what I was going for. It doesn't like that. Those aren't the right credentials. Basically, we get an unauthorized. We are not able to view this page because we don't have credentials for it. There are, for each browser, there's different ways to set up a proxy. I have this thing on here, plugin Foxy Proxy that kind of like automates it. So basically you can just, come up to this Fox over here in the right of your browser and turn on Burp Suite. That'll automatically send your traffic for Firefox through Burp Suite. It's not like it's an incredibly involved process to set up a proxy manually. It just varies by browser, and much like syntax, the steps, you can forget them a lot. So, it's a nice little plugin that you can use. And then let's actually start up Burp Suite. So we want to go down to the Kali Dragon over here at the bottom, like a Windows Start menu, and go to Web Application Analysis and Burp Suite. This is the Community Edition, which the Community Edition is really great. You can learn really well in it. It, like anything that has a paid thing, obviously the paid one will have more features, but I think I really commend, these guys at Portswigger, as well as Metasploit, as well as some other ones that have done a really good job of keeping the Community Edition really good so people can still learn on it. It's a great tool for learning web app pen testing. So let's start up Burp. You can just do the defaults for everything. And yeah, it's out of date because it's a lab. It happens. And so we are already hooked up to it. So if we, again, try to go to this URL, this time Burp pops up and you see the proxy tab is lit up. So if we go over to proxy, that is going to capture all of our traffic from our browser before it gets sent on to the web server, where we can make changes, we can view parameters, and we could change, anything we wanted to really in this before we send it on to our web server. And we see you can turn intercept off if you want to not capture things, and we can forward this on to the server. The server responds. You can set up Burp to catch responses as well. It's not quite as useful for this, but if you wanted to see what was in the response. And, we could again put in like admin, even though we know that's not right. So again, before that admin that we just did goes to the server, it gets captured by our proxy in Burp. We're getting page basic. It's got the usuals, the host, the user, agent, everything for a typical HTTP request. But you see down here at the bottom, authorization basic. So this is using basic authentication, which is not a particularly secure way to authenticate, but some sites still do use it. And yeah, I definitely encourage you to look into basic authentication and why it is generally not recommended for anything really secure. Well, I guess first of all, we should probably be using HTTPS, which at this point we're not, though. Though Burp can do HTTPS as well. It's not, and even certificate, it won't throw up the certificate warning. It'll take care of all of that. So don't worry, it's not just an HTTP tool by any means, because hopefully most of the sites you'll be asked to look at will at least do the basics of having SSL. But anyway, this is base 64 encoded, just because that's how basic auth works. Notice I said encoded, not encrypted, so it's something we can reverse. So if we highlight that, right click on it, and actually, yeah, well, we can just do that. Send it to the decoder. So decoder, all these guys up here at the top are all things that Burp can do. We've looked at proxy. We're now looking at encoder or decoder. We're not going to see all of them, but we'll continue to use Burp as we actually do the real examples anyway. And so if we decode this as base 64, it comes out as admin, which that's not the real password. This isn't like we captured the password. We captured what we sent. We sent admin, we captured it. So basically what this is doing is taking our username and password, putting a colon between them, and base 64 encoding it, for basic authentication. So what we can do, go back to our proxy here, and I want to send this guy to intruder. So we're going to go over a tab. So it's going to take this request, send it to the intruder tab. And, this allows us to kind of do things like password attacks and whatnot, but on pieces of a HTTP request. So in particular, what we want to do on this one is basically do exactly that, a password attack. So we want to send it different credentials, just like we did with Hydra before for some of our online password attacks. And base 64 encoded, obviously, and send it to the web server and see whether we get unauthorized. But if the credentials are right, we should be able to log in. So that's what we're gonna do. So first off, I want to say this guy is going, I put these, I don't even know what you call this symbol. It's like S's put together, but that's what it uses for parameters or the markers for it. And we could change it to like a name that makes sense as well. I'll just call it like creds, but you don't have to do that. So that's going to be where it's going to put the username and password. And then we need to tell it what we want to put there. So we can go to payloads over here, and we can bring in a word list, or we can add things manually. If you go to root desktop, we do have the word list that users share word lists as well, but here's one that'll get it fairly quickly. And so it just loads up all those passwords. But remember, when we decoded, it was not just the password, it was username : password. So right now in our intruder payloads, we just have the password. So luckily Burp makes it really easy to fix that. We have like payload processing rules, which are like those rule sets that I talked about when we were doing password cracking, where you could mangle all the words with rules. So this is kind of the same thing. So let's add, so the first thing we want to do is add a prefix. So I'll go with username admin. So we want admin : and then after that will be the password, and it will cycle through admin : well, from what I see, Marisol, admin : Nikita, so on and so forth. And finally, we do also want to encode it, because it does send it base 64 encoded. And just then if we go back here to our position, so what that's going to do is, so we've got the payload in there, and we're going to send it all of these different admin : password base64 encoded. It's just going to keep sending this URL request, and it's going to see what the response is. So we'll get unauthorized every time unless our credentials are correct, in which case then we'll get some other response, and we'll be able to tell based on that response that we found the right credentials. All right, so let's send this guy on its merry way. And it does say this is community edition and some functionality is disabled and the attacks are time throttled. So it is going to be kind of slow. So this is going to be another one where I'm just going to cut it and not ad lib for you guys about how cool my keyboards are again. If you guys watched that video, I apologize profusely. Anyhow, so we'll just let this go. And yeah, we're seeing status 401. To get it to come up, to be able to see it like immediately as it happens, you can sort these. So, if I sort it by status, as soon as the status is something else, it'll pop up to the top instead of being in order. So yeah, again, I'm going to cut the video because it is throttled, so it will take a couple minutes to get to where it needs to be, but I'll put it back on. You let yours run and there will be. We're back, and we do find that we get a different status, 301, at one of the ones that it sends. And if we look at wrong one. If we look at this one, and so here's the basic auth that it sent down here at the bottom. And if we send that to the decoder, and the first thing we want to do is decode it from URL. You see like these, %3D, like equal sign and stuff are getting encoded because it's a URL. So let's URL decode it. Now it looks more like base64 with the equal at the end. And then so we'll decode that as base64, and we get admin : cookie1. So since we got a different response, that should be the correct password cookie1. And we can try that. We can turn off, if you have your proxy on, your browser will stop working. So if you're not specifically looking to intercept things, I just keep intercept off. But if we come back to here and we do admin and cookie1, I apparently cannot spell COOKIE1. We get our flag. So that's just a basics of using Burp Suite. Like I said, there's a lot more it can do, but we will see a lot more of it because we'll use it in our exercises, when we actually start exploiting things. Though I guess we technically kind of exploited something here, but the basic auth is not good. Don't use it. So anyway, I'll see you guys next time.